Hello and welcome to Resilience and Relationships R&R. I am Stephanie Olson and I'm here with
Rebecca Saunders.
Yay. So, we are going to talk. I love this topic, but it's uncomfortable for some people, I know. But we're going to talk about body boundaries with youth. Do you want to kind of start that conversation and what we mean by that, what you mean by that?
So, it's definitely one of those conversations that is necessary, can feel extremely uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to. But
Mm-mm.
what we're talking about is how do you talk to your kids? And we'll go through what different ages, how this looks different. But how do you talk to your kids about what are and are not appropriate things with their body? So,
Yeah.
what boundaries should you have up? Can those change from person to person? What does that look like?
Right, right. And I've I've seen some really interesting things with boundaries, but I think it really starts with one very important piece of that is teaching your youth the anatomically correct body part
Mhm.
names. And I think for some reason that is uncomfortable for parents and caregivers to do sometimes. I'm not sure why, but what we know is there are real dangerous problems if you don't name those
Right.
correctly.
2 and 4, and I can tell you that sometimes it is awkward,
Hmm.
when my son will scream out, "Don't touch my body part," when I'm changing his
Right,
diaper. It's
right.
well, it's awkward,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the benefits definitely outweigh the risks. And so what is
absolutely.
that risk? You wanna explain that?
Yeah. So there was an actually very well known story about or at least well known in our circles, about a mom who taught her to say, and we are not going to be using those terms only because of
It'll
the algorithm, not because we're ashamed of those terms, but because we don't want YouTube specifically to not allow this to go anywhere.
We
So
prefer you actually get to see the podcast.
yes, it's important. So there was a mom who actually taught her daughter to name her body part Cookie, and instead of the V body part. And so she actually did get SA'd by a male family member. And she told her teacher, who she considered to be her safe adult, and she went and told her teacher, my daddy or whomever it was has been touching my cookie. Well, to the teacher, she thought she was actually talking about like a chocolate chip cookie that you eat and somebody was trying to touch her cookie or steal her cookie or whatever. And the SA went, even though disclosed by the little girl, went unreported because the teacher at first didn't understand what was actually being reported. And so it's important that we teach our children the appropriate names so that if they do need to disclose, whether to us or somebody else, that they have the appropriate terminology to share that with the appropriate people.
And that is definitely worth any discomfort because,
Yeah.
I mean, just imagining that little girl and another thing happens too, whenever she tries to report this and it's treated like no big deal because they don't understand what she's saying. I mean,
Right.
you're thinking then, "Oh, I guess this is okay."
It's okay, or I'm not being heard, or no one really cares. I mean, there's so many things that can come from something like that. And it really doesn't matter what body part we're talking about. We need to teach them the anatomically correct terms so that when they do report, if they do report, not when, if they do have to report, people understand what they're talking about.
And it's also a protective factor against that abuse
Mhm.
ever occurring. There have been conversations with convicted, I don't know if I can say P word, people who are
Offenders,
offended
convicted offenders. Yeah.
for words.
I
Yes.
know we have to be so careful, which is
ironic
whatever,
because
which is ironic.
we're right.
Yes.
But
Yes.
offenders of children
Mhm.
who had been convicted and imprisoned. And they have even confirmed, if a child will say, you can't touch my anatomically correct body part,
Mhm.
they're less likely because they know, oh, that's a child who's been talked to. They're
Yes.
probably going to tell.
Exactly. This is somebody that knows this, which means, yes, to your point, they've had these conversations with their loved ones. And so this is not going to be, it's not going to be an easy mark for them, so to speak. Yeah, that's an
So
excellent
then I'll
point.
move on to someone who hasn't, which is important
Right.
to know because we all need to be having these conversations. We don't want to make it easy.
Exactly. And so let's make sure that all of our kids become that person who, they go to next and then okay, that's not going to work and next and that is what education is all about from a very young age. I'll say it again. I've said it 100 times, but when people ask me at what age do you start talking to your child about sex, so early that they don't remember when you started the conversation. And that's age appropriate. We want to do it in an appropriate way that they understand, that they can relate to, that they're comfortable with. We don't want to be giving children adult conversations and topics, but we do want to have those conversations at an age appropriate and developmentally appropriate way to our youth
Yeah.
as young as very beginning.
And I want to say too, just to clarify.
Yeah,
So saying those correct terms makes it less likely, but it's not 100%. So
for
there, like,
sure.
we need to be still watching and everything. But I just wanted to make a little disclaimer about that in case you're listening and you think, oh, well, that happened to me or someone I know, and we did. Not your
Right.
fault. This is
Right.
a protective factor that we can share.
Yeah, that's a great point. And of course, we know, and whether you have been essayed, whether your child has been essayed, somebody in your family, it is not the person's fault who has been essayed. It is the perpetrator's fault all of the time, 100% of
No
the
matter what.
time, no matter what. And so I do think that's a very important thing to share. And I think to that point, you know, it's really interesting, and I'm just going to go here for a little bit and we can keep talking about some other stuff. But I just heard somebody share that they were essayed as a child, and their mom talked to law enforcement, and law enforcement said, you do not want to put them through a trial, through prosecution, all of those things. And so mom came back and said, we're not going to pursue this. We're not going to do anything out of protection. But what this child heard and carried for the rest of her life until healing really started to set in was you aren't worth
Mm,
pursuing action. And I do think we have to be really careful how we respond and and that we do it in a way that teaches our youth, I will go to the ends of the earth to protect you. It doesn't matter. And you are my top priority. And that can be done in different ways. And I'm not saying that everything should, I mean, I'm personally all about reporting and making sure that this perpetrator doesn't do it again. And yet, every situation is very different. Some situations are beyond the statute of limitations. And so reporting is no longer an option, or whatever the case may be. But regardless, as parents and caregivers, we need to give that impression verbally,
mm,
physically, that you are the priority and we will protect you through this.
absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I hear a lot of stories. In fact, I know one personally, like I know the people where a young girl was essayed by dad. So it was biological dad, essayed by dad. Mom protected dad. And so didn't do anything, it'll never happen again. And then the family protected dad. And actually, the daughter then still had a relationship with dad, still brought her kids around now grandpa, and grandpa essayed the grandchildren. I think what happened was grandpa also, or this guy essayed somebody else's child, so out of the family
Like if
also, like a friend, and that person pursued prosecution, and he wound up getting convicted and spent time in prison and wound up dying in prison. It was it
wow.
But I remember thinking that the pain of that child who was originally essayed, because not only did the essay happen, but mom didn't protect her. And whether you recognize that early on as a child as that's not protection, or you do understand it traumatizes you. And so that does come out later in life, and the recognition that this person didn't protect me who should have protected me is really important. That's a really big thing.
Yeah. My goodness.
It's hard.
What a heartbreaking story.
Yes.
And to know
Yeah.
that it's not isolated either, that
Right.
happens all over.
Right. And the reality is, and I think this is important to say, that is never one and done. I mean, if you see that happening, whether in your family, somebody else's, you have to have the expectation that that will happen again, if not to that individual, to another individual. And so just being mindful of that piece, I think, is important.
And that can be really hard to accept.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So
all
talk about some other boundaries. That just went really
right.
heavy right away. Whew. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like we said, we're not scared of saying stuff. We're not scared of heavy
No,
topics. But
we
okay,
are not.
so yes, body boundaries. It really does start with that foundation of
Yeah.
being able to talk about things in the most accurate way.
Hmm.
Another foundational piece, I believe, is developing that relationship with your children to where they will ask you or talk to you if something feels
Yes.
uncomfortable. And you did a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. That has to start with all of the conversations that we don't care about, that your kids want to talk about, and making them a priority. And I always say that when your kids walk into the room, or the kids that you're serving, or whomever, that your eyes should light up like there is no one else more important in your world right at that moment. And I think that's where it starts, because you can't have a conversation with a kiddo that is like super heavy and deep. If that's your first real conversation, not going to really happen. It's not going to work.
Now they'll just look at you like, why are you doing this?
Yeah. Why
What's
are
happening?
you torturing both of us right now? Yes. Yeah. So go ahead and speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. I I see this with my littles, and it's that I want to show you this tower I built over, and I'm like, you just put one more block on it. It hasn't even changed, but it's important. We need to look at it. We need to appreciate it. And it makes it.
Yes,
It
it
really does.
does. It really does.
So once those foundational pieces are laid, then we start talking about boundaries in themselves and what is a boundary. So how would you describe that, and when would you describe that?
Boundaries are one of my favorite conversations in the world. Seriously, I could talk about boundaries all day long. And it's not because they're easy to set or easy to do, but they're so important, and we all need to get it. So this is how I define boundaries. I define boundaries as they're like fences, and fences can keep us in or keep us out. So they can protect us internally, or they can keep other people out to keep us protected. So that's how I look at it.
Like
And a
that.
boundary can be as simple as, please don't call me past 9 o'clock because I'm sleeping after 9. Although that's where do not disturb on your phone comes in. I say I live and die by that. That's really important. But that could be a boundary. Just don't call me past, or, once I'm with my family in the evening, that's my family time. Unless it's an emergency, I'm not going to be on the phone, whatever. That could be a boundary. Or as severe as, you are not a safe person in my life, and I no longer want contact with you, and I no longer want to have a relationship with you. So I think boundaries can look like a number of different things like that.
Yeah. And so teaching kids about boundaries, that can start, I mean, really, really little. I talked to my littles about that. I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And like you might hear my 2-year-old say, respect my boundary when he's mad at his
That's right. That's fabulous, by the way. But yes.
We've talked
Yeah.
about it. And so
Yeah.
usually with them, it's, I try to introduce the language because it's important that they have that language and that they know that
Yeah.
they can set it. So
Right.
instead of, my brother pushed down my tower and I'm going to, push him over, I say,
Hmm.
okay, look, you can say, I'm asking to play alone right now. Please respect that. Right. And so is it flawless? No.
No, but I have to interject. I have to interject because I have heard Rebecca on the phone copious amounts of times talking to her. You are such a good mom. I just love hearing you talk to your kids, because I don't remember being that amazing or that gentle. I'm sure it all changes in your mind at some point, but you're just so compassionate and caring, and you have such a great way with you. And I feel like I was always like, stop, don't hit your brother, whatever. You just are
Like
so
sometimes too.
you are just very gentle and compassionate. I love that. So I digress.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
But when
But
it gets
yeah.
to that, I mean, body boundaries specifically,
Mhm.
we, I don't know, you can tell me if I don't know that this is the right thing to do. It's just kind of what we've done that's been okay for us. But we go through scenarios.
Mhm.
And so, especially me, it's just me and the kids. And so I'm outnumbered. And so I try very hard to help them understand, like, we have rules for a reason. We need to
Yeah.
know. So if someone ever makes you feel uncomfortable, what do? You tell mom. If
Yeah.
this happens, what do? And all the answers are you tell mom.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
always tell mom. And so I just try to drill that into their heads. But one of the things we've talked about too is if someone touches your body in a way that you don't like, you ask them to stop and you tell mom.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you would add to that?
Well, I think that's great. And I would add that there is absolutely no right or wrong to that. So, for example, if somebody wants to hold your hand, it's a friend at school, a little preschool friend that wants to hold your hand. And if you don't feel comfortable holding that friend's hand, you get to say, I don't feel comfortable holding my friend's hand, you know, and talk to mom. I I think hugging, things like that. So that's the only thing I would add, that it doesn't have to be, I know a lot of people talk about if somebody touches you in your bathing suit areas, is what they call it sometimes. And of course we would use those anatomically correct terms with our children. But I think it is important that we just let them know that it doesn't matter, that you don't have to hug somebody, that you don't have to let somebody touch you it's different if you have a 2-year-old and mom's picking you up and they don't want to be picked up. That's a totally different thing. And you can explain that to youth too. Like, these are the differences. They're smart. They get it. But yeah, I think that's really important. That doesn't matter what it is, you tell mom, but you can also tell that person, no, thank you. So I love that.
How do you think that conversation shifts as children age? You've had kids that have completely grown up, so you've been through all those stages. What have you noticed?
Completely grown up. I will do those air quotes too. Yes.
They're not teenagers.
um Gosh, I think the only thing that doesn't change, or that does change with that conversation, is with adults. You maybe don't have to go and tell your mom, right? You can, and if mom's a safe place, that's great. But that you should, if it is something that you don't feel comfortable with and it's not egregious, yeah, please don't touch me, or don't post that on social media. I don't want to hug. I'm not a hugger. Whatever it is, you get to say no and keep doing that. It's good to do that. But if it's something that is a problem and that kind of goes into the essay area, then who are your safe adults that you can talk to? Who are the people in your life? And we're talking adults right now, but so other safe adults, who are the people in your life that you do feel comfortable going to and letting them know, because that stuff you should never have to keep to yourself. Let somebody else bear
Yeah,
that burden with you.
absolutely. And so there's another piece to this where we see language kind of shifting,
Mhm.
because you used to hear a lot about like good touches versus bad touches,
Right.
but we've seen that this is not very helpful anymore, because the reality is even a touch that we would call bad, like an inappropriate touch, would possibly produce some kind of physical sensation that kids would not
Yes.
associate with bad. So how do you keep that in mind when you're having these conversations? How do you shift that language?
Yes, I think that it's so good that we're talking about this, because good touch, bad touch is subjective, right? A hug could be bad touch to somebody. And that's okay. That's a good thing, right? Or it's not a good thing, it's not a bad, it's a neutral thing, but it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
At the same time, we do know that our bodies respond to touch in a physiological way. That's normal. That's a positive thing.
and it's
That's
not
not
really
an
in control.
It's nothing we can control. And so I think that that has been very confusing for people who have been essayed, particularly people, young people who have never experienced that before, or this is a new sensation or whatever, that it may absolutely feel good, so to speak, but that doesn't make it appropriate.
Mhm.
I've actually heard this from people who are perpetrators, and their rationale is, well, they liked it because they
Mm.
responded. That does not mean anything, and shame on you, right? So I think that we need to be really well, and again, this comes to just saying what it is, being honest, being open, communicating in a way that is clear. And so if you're talking about some sort of essay from somebody else, you want to be really clear what that is and what that might look like. And I think there's nothing wrong with teaching kids your body does react to things, because it's your body. It's reactive at times. And so, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like what you're saying. I think that is probably the most uncomfortable piece of this.
Mhm.
And so because of that, I think it's a lot easier to
Yeah.
ignore, right?
Mhm.
If we don't want to go there. But for someone, especially someone who's young, who may experience abuse, if you haven't talked about it, there's shame that comes with that.
Yeah.
You know, you've heard survivors talk about, I didn't want to tell anyone because my body
Right.
responded, and I
Right.
guess that means I was okay with it. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that. And
Yeah.
so I like the idea of, helping them understand that your body might respond, but that doesn't mean that you're okay with it. And it doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think just as we're talking, it makes me think of, I'm very big on object lessons. I love a good object lesson. It makes me think of ice. Like, I'm
Mm.
thinking a good way that I might teach this to my kids, and I'm literally brainstorming this as we're
I
talking.
love this. Yeah.
Putting a piece of ice on your skin, like your body will react to that. If you hold it there
Mm.
long enough, it will go numb.
Yeah.
Control that. You did not make your skin go numb. It's the ice doing that.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you even like that sensation. It
That's
is something
good.
that happens. And so I
Yeah.
think that might be a way I explain it to them when they're a little bit
That's
bigger.
good. I like that. That's really good. Yeah. And then maybe tell them don't hold ice on their
And don't do
skin.
that. Maybe like I said, brainstorming in real time. Someone take that idea and make it better.
No, that is great. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good piece of advice on that. And I was thinking of something else. Hold on just a second. That made me think. Um, maybe I'll come to it. So, what other boundaries with youth do you think are important to put into place?
Well, something I always tell my kids, and honestly any kid that will listen, I think this should be public knowledge, is that we don't keep secrets. And
Okay.
so,
This is a good one. I want to talk about this a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't matter what it's about, whether it's about your body, whether it's about a gift, whatever. We do not keep secrets. And so if anyone tells you to keep a secret, you come and tell me immediately. And so far they have, which is great. They're still so little. I hope it continues that
Hmm.
way. But literally the other day, my daughter had said, someone asked me if I wanted a sucker, and they said to keep it a secret from you, but I won't. And I'm like, good job. You can have one. Great.
Interesting.
Because she knows. And like, you tell me all the time.
Yeah.
And I think I'm probably a broken record. I feel like I say that more than anything else. You tell me. But
Yeah.
I think sometimes, that this can be our little secret. And that is a way that
Hmm.
grooming can start too. It can start with small
Yes.
things. Will you keep my secret about this innocuous thing?
Yes. Exactly. Okay. So here's my challenge that I hear all the time. I want to hear your thoughts on this. So I had a grandma who was throwing a surprise party for her son, told her grandkids about it, which I wouldn't have done that. I learned the very hard way not to tell kids about presents and things like that because they will blab. So just, yeah, keep it to yourself. But so she told her grandkids and then said, don't tell dad this is a secret. Talk about that.
Well, I would hope that they would go tell their dad. I mean, the word
Right.
secret could trigger that response of like, oh, you told me a secret. I'm going to tell it.
Yes.
In that, I tell my kids that there's a difference between secrets and surprises.
Okay. Yep.
Surprises you can share with some people, and you can share with everyone at a certain time. So, like the surprise party, you can't tell dad, but you can tell mom.
And it always everybody finds out in the
Yeah,
end. So it's not a secret that stays a secret. It's not our little secret. It's something that everybody finds
everyone can
out.
know at a
Yeah.
certain.
Right.
So, yeah, surprise party, you can tell mom or whoever else. And then on the day of the party, dad will know too. It will be public.
Right.
And you'll
Right.
never get in trouble. If you accidentally tell a surprise, you don't get in trouble.
Right.
No consequence. Nothing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's good. Same things. The difference between a surprise and a secret. And really, that's kind of the only time I can think of where you would be telling somebody, don't tell so and so
Right?
appropriately, a kiddo that you would be saying that would be a surprise party or present of some sort. So you do have to be really careful. And I think that goes back to appropriate verbiage. The word secret has a whole different connotation to it. Yeah. That's a that's good.
Absolutely. And kind of with that, if there's ever a situation where someone tells you, if you tell, I will do XYZ,
Mm.
that's an immediate red flag too. You need to tell me right away, and you're not going to get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
And I've tried to, one of my kids actually asked me the other day when we were kind of going through some of this stuff again. Well, what happens if they want to hurt you? And which
Mm.
I said, look at my muscles, which are actually non-existent, but I can handle it.
They have to get through me first. Yeah,
But
that's good though.
yeah, I mean, there is no consequence. You will never be in trouble for telling me the truth. And I try to live that out in
Yeah.
other things too. Like, you do something wrong, you tell me the truth. You're not in trouble for telling me. We're still going to have to right the wrong, whatever it is. But it's automatically less if you just tell me the truth, because I want to get across how important that is.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you then respond to well, what if they say they're going to hurt you? Because you really do have to respond to that at some
Mm-hmm.
point, right? And the
Yeah.
likelihood, and here's the hard thing, because the likelihood is the majority of people who say that will not follow through with that. And
No.
so we can legitimately say that the chances of that happening are not high. You don't ever want to make a promise like that will never happen. You don't want to indicate that. I mean, you can never say never, but I think to
Mhm.
really highlight that probably won't happen, and most people who say that won't actually do anything. It's just a scare tactic.
Yeah. And I think communicating that to our kids is fine. This is a way
Yeah.
that sometimes people who want to do harm will try to scare you into not telling, but you need to tell anyways.
Hmm.
And same thing if they threaten to hurt you. I mean, you need to tell anyways, because that's the only way we can get out of the situation.
I used to tell my kids all rules get broken. Like, so for example, if somebody, I mean, we know, even though most trafficked individuals are not kidnapped, we know that kidnapping does happen, right? And so I used to tell my kids, um, if anybody ever picks you up that is not supposed to, there are no more rules on the table. If you're in a store, you can kick TVs off, you can break
Yeah,
things, you can yell, you can shout, you can scream, whatever. There are no rules. And I think that's an important thing to really
that's a good way to say
communicate.
that.
Hmm. Because our kids are taught, don't yell, whatever you do, don't break something, don't touch that. But once you're in survival mode, all of those rules are off the table.
I really, really like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because I've told my kids, if someone were ever to try to take you or keep you away from mom, you hurt them. But I didn't even
Hmm.
think about, knock things off shelves, draw attention to yourself. So I'm going to have to add that
Exactly.
into our conversations too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important. Unfortunately, no one ever had to use something like that, but it is good for them to know that. Okay, so here's a boundary I would love to talk to you about. And this actually happened to my adult daughter at work. And it was like a fast food restaurant or whatever. And she worked with or works with a lot of men, and they called her babe, honey, or whatever. And so I asked her what she said, and I think she rolled her eyes and did anyway. I don't know, I can't remember if I know in my head she didn't handle it the way I would want her to handle it, I can tell you that. And so I said, if somebody calls you a name, I mean, regardless of what the name is, I'm not talking about like a necessarily like a mean name, but if somebody calls you a name that you're not comfortable with, I don't even care. Like personally go by Stephanie. There are some people who call me Steph, and I'm actually okay with certain people if I've had relationships with them for a long time. My husband always called me Steph. And so all of his friends called me Steph. And so there's certain people, I have some people in as colleagues who I've been colleagues with for a long time who call me Steph. But I personally don't love the name Steph. And so when I'm on the phone with a salesperson, for example, and they're like, "Hey, Steph, how are you?" I always say, "My name is Stephanie," because you've not earned the right
You don't know me.
to call me Steph. Yes. And I think that's very, like, you see, my name is Stephanie. I think it's very, I don't know, what's the word? Like, it's quite an assumption to call me by a nickname, in my opinion, if you've never met me in my entire life. So that is like a non-extreme form of that, and to be okay with, actually, my name is Stephanie, or if somebody mispronounces your name or whatever. But if some guy is calling me babe or honey or sweetie, I'm immediately going to respond, "My name is not sweetie, it's Stephanie." And then if they continue that, you're no longer in my presence. Right? I mean, there's nothing, I'm not gonna, and if that's my boss, for example, even so, I mean, it wasn't her boss, but I mean, even so, I would take care of that, right? So, but yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think there's a few different ways you can approach it. So, I mean, everyone has different comfort levels, but if it's something that you're not comfortable with, I mean, your direct approach, that's great.
Yeah.
I sometimes struggle being direct. Like if it's
Hmm.
about my kids, I
Yes, you have no problem, right?
if it's me, I struggle with that. And so I
Interesting.
tend to say something more like, "Oh, that's really weird you would call me that." And then just continue whatever I'm doing. Or,
That's
"Oh,
funny.
I don't know that your wife would like that."
Yeah.
And then
Ooh, that's
yeah,
good.
I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah, you can absolutely. I mean, obviously, this is no longer, I mean, youth. Obviously, if you're 6, you're not going to say that. But also teaching littles to be able to say, "My name is da da da," or "I like to be
And that's
called."
the thing, to stand up
That
for
is, it is a very good thing. And then to be confident in that. And yeah, I've accidentally called people. Oh my gosh, I know what it was. This is funny. I met a woman and we had a coffee. So it was like I met her at a networking thing and we were talking and I kept calling her the wrong name. The
no.
whole time we were talking. And finally I knew the owner of the restaurant and she came over and I said, "This is the owner of the restaurant." And the woman introduced herself with her
You're right.
real name. And I said,
Oh my gosh.
I actually said, "Oh my gosh, I've been calling you such and such this entire time. Why didn't you tell me what your name was?"
She committed. She's like, "That's my name now." Okay.
I know. Well, so that's what, yeah, I was like, well, now your name is this, Jesus actually changed a lot of names. He would go around, "Your name is no longer Saul, it is Paul. It's no longer," yeah. So that is what I decided to do with her. But yeah, I was like, why didn't you tell me that wasn't your name? If somebody calls me Susan over and over again, I'm going to say something. My mom does that because her sister's name is Susan and my name is Stephanie. And so she calls me Sue all the time. And I'll be like, "Yeah, it's Stephanie."
No,
But
mom.
that's mom. Moms get your name wrong, and that's okay. Oh, yeah, that was
I'd
embarrassing.
love to see a world where kids are taught that it's okay to
Yeah,
stand up for yourself. And
yeah,
as adults, they're not uncomfortable about it. They just
yeah.
respectfully, and that's the key word too, respectfully. Like it doesn't
Yes.
have to be rude.
It's it absolutely. You can say everything very respectfully. And I think the bottom line is people don't want to embarrass somebody or make them feel bad. But I was absolutely more embarrassed when I found out I had been calling her the wrong name for the last hour. So I think that is just because at some point you have to tell somebody,
Right. You were gonna find out eventually.
right?
So
Maybe, I guess, or I just call her that name for the rest of yeah, I think that is a really important piece that we do feel comfortable saying, "No, that's actually not what I like to be called. I like to be called this." So,
I was just talking to a kindergarten age child in our family, and the child was telling me that their teacher was a yeller.
oh.
And I'm like, oh, that's really unfortunate. And so this child, I'm trying not to identify so hard, but
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
child was saying, my teacher yelled at me and it hurt my feelings, and I don't want to ask anymore to go to the bathroom.
Oh, sad.
Really sensitive little one. And so what I said to this child is, it's okay. What you need to do next time is say, hey, yes, ma'am. Can you please talk to me nicer?
Mm.
And that is totally okay. And if you get in trouble for that, you call me.
Yes.
Give your shit get in
Yes.
trouble for that. So
Yes.
that's what I try to teach even my kids.
That's
Yeah,
good.
I'm going to listen to what you're saying. Also, please be nice to me. Don't get hurt.
Right.
I don't tell them
Right.
to, but
Don't
like,
Right.
please be
Right.
nice.
Yeah. No,
Thank you.
that's
No matter
I
what age you are, you should be able to say that. Please talk nicer to me.
I think that's very important. Yeah. Wow, that's good. I love it. Well, anything else on boundaries or I mean, we could talk about boundaries
Yeah, ever.
forever because boundaries just are this and what I've noticed is that when people are in abusive situations, boundaries are much harder.
Hmm.
And so it is really helping with those boundaries early on so that if an unhealthy situation arises or a relationship that's not appropriate or a relationship that is appropriate but then all of a sudden turns abusive and now it's not anymore, that you recognize that right away so that when if somebody crosses that boundary you are really comfortable saying, hey, you just crossed my boundary, don't do that again. They do that again, now we're done.
Hmm.
And so I do think that's one of the things people who do harm really count on the fact that you're not going to be strong enough to set a boundary and then ask somebody to follow through with that. And I think if we can teach that at a very young age, our kids will be much safer.
It'll help them for life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this was good. I like this. It started out really hard.
Hopefully,
We went a little lighter. We got lighter as we went.
well,
But
I
good
think
stuff.
we should revisit this later and go
Yeah.
into some more, even as adults.
I love boundaries. Yeah. It's a good conversation. So I agree. Let's talk about boundaries again as adults and what those can look like and why they're so important. And yeah, that sounds good. Awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, we appreciate your time and we will see you next time. Get some R&R. Bye.